Well, welcome back. Today we're gonna finish Act 1 and meet Juliet. We also are going to meet something that is crucial to this trope of the boy meets the girl. It's called blocking first. You can think of movies you've seen that are romances. It's not the boy sees the girl sees the boy, and they get married, but there is something between them that makes it difficult. The boy is ugly or doesn't have money or something and keeps him from having that girl. Whatever that thing is from being them together is called the blocking force. And Romeo and Juliet already know they have a lot of blocking forces. The ancient grudge between the two families, the Capulets and the Montagues. So this problem is going for a long time, and that's a blocking force between these two families, and then between Romeo and Juliet, because one of them is the Capulet and one of them is the Montague. We meet another blocking force when we first meet Juliet in scene 3. In scene 3 we have on stage Juliet's mother, Juliet, and Juliet's nurse. And the nurse is definitely a comic figure. We'll look at that later. But what we find out is that Juliet is about to have a birthday. She's 2 weeks away from her 14th birthday. Now, that sounds very young to us today to be thinking about marriage. But that's what Juliet's mother believes. In fact, her mother tells her, when I was your age, I already had you. That's quite young. When she's 14, she's supposed to get married to someone, and the blocking force is that Juliet's mother has someone in mind for her, and that's not Romeo, it's Count Paris. And Juliet's mother asks Juliet, what do you think of him? The nurse says, oh, he is a man of wax. That's very interesting, because I do not know a man of wax is a good thing, that you can change yourself so easily, or is a bad thing. Then Juliet's mother says, no, he's a flower. These are not very positive things for men either. So Juliet says, I'll take a look at him, and the mother goes, a very interesting sort of metaphorical idea that happens in scene 3 around line 79. This is what Lady Capulet, Juliet's mother, says. What say you? Can you love the gentleman? This night you shall behold him at our feast. The Capulets are throwing a party. Read over the volume of young Paris's face, and find delight. Read there with beauty's pen. This is a metaphor. It says that this is that. That's what metaphor is. One thing is something else. And here is another thing. It's Paris, and he is a book. And if you read his face, read this book, you'll know if you like him or not. It's actually a special kind of metaphor. It's called an extended metaphor, because we have a metaphor and then she extends it. She keeps talking about it. And that continues in the next lines on line 85. She continues this metaphor of Paris being a book. And what obscured in this fair volume lies, find written in the margins of his eyes, this precious book of love. This unbound lover, to beautify him, only lacks a cover. So he's the contents of the book, and now he needs Juliet as the cover. The mother is saying something interesting here about the relationship between men and women. Men have the content, they have the substance like in a book. And the woman, the wife, would just be the beautiful cover designed on top of him to sell the book perhaps. So her is just like an accessory for the substance of Paris. Well, we know why they want to get married, or at least Nurse says that Juliet can have a baby. As Nurse says in line 95, women grow by men. She means grow pregnant, not grow in intellectual depth or in spiritual ability, but just grow to have children. So we see this very conservative idea of what marriage is. What is Juliet says to this? She says, I look to like if looking, liking, move. So I'll take a look at him and I see how I feel about him. Okay, so we have the blocking force here is Paris, and the mother wants to marry Juliet. But another blocking force here is this conservative traditional ideas of what the relationship between a man and a woman should be. This will be another kind of love, I think, from Lady Capulet's viewpoints. And that's a traditional love in marriage. Okay, so we have our blocking force. Let's move along from there. The party itself is described as a masquerade. So everyone attends a party is going to wear some sort of mask. This is for us great because Shakespeare, as I said earlier in one of the lessons, he doesn't give a lot of stage directions. We don't really know what the actors are doing. And here is this masquerade. We don't really know what the actors are wearing. What kind of masks do they have on? What sort of costume do they have? It's a costume party. Since Shakespeare doesn't tell us in stage directions, that's great because we can imagine that they're wearing whatever we want. So for the stage direction itself, we can see on scene 4, line 29. This is where we have Mercutio, another friend of Romeo's. And we'll look more closely later at him. But this happens in line 29 when Mercutio is putting on his mask. He says, "Give me a case to put my visage in." Visage is your face. And it says in the stage directions he puts on a mask, but we do not know what kind of mask it is. And Romeo too is wearing some sort of costume, but we do not know what it is. And Juliet as well. We can watch different ways that's this being shown on stage or on the screen. So even that we don't know how Romeo is dressed up, we have some possibilities. And I want to go ahead and sort of jump forward here, that moment when he first meets the Juliet. So we'll have some revelations about Romeo's character. Let's go and take a look at this now. When Romeo first meets her, this is in scene 5, line 43. This is when Romeo first sees Juliet from a distance. So line 43, scene 5, he says, "Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night as a rich jewel in Ethiop's ear." Earlier I said look for how Juliet is described as both a moon figure and also as a sun figure. We see it here, this torches to burn bright. This is sort of like sunlight, fire imagery. But then she hangs upon the cheek of night. That's the moon. So we have her being described in both ways. When Romeo sees her, this is what he thinks of her immediately, that she's beautiful. And he even says this, line 46, "Beauty to reach for use." Here is not really about love so much, I think, but what about the concept of beauty. Beauty has no practical value for Romeo. But look what earlier Lady Capulet, Juliet's mother, said about Julia, that she will be the cover for the book that is Paris. That cover might be a beautiful cover, but it's a useful cover. It has practical value. While here for Romeo, it's a different idea of what Juliet's beauty can be. Not something that has this practical use, but not something to be used. Something that has no use, something that is just beautiful. It's an interesting concept for Romeo. It shows us that he's a romantic, not a practical guy, I think. After that, he calls her a snowy dove among the crows. Snowy dove is the idea of purity, sort of pure figure. After that, we see that he has a plan as well in the lines. "The measure done, I'll watch her place of stand, and touching hers make blessed my rude hand." There's a measure done means that there is a dance, a waltz or something like that, and when the dance is over, he will see where she stands and go over to her and try to touch her hand. This is very bold character, I think. He is already ready to move. And don't forget, he just previously said to Benvolio that he loves Rosalind like no one else. So what does that say about his character? Well, he's very capricious, he's moody, he changes his mind often, or we can say he's younger. So let's move forward to when he actually does approach Juliet. After the dance is over, we assume there is no stage direction. This happens in the same scene on line 93, 92, this is what he says. "If I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, the gentle sin is this, my lips, two blushing pilgrims, ready stand to smooth that rough touch with a tender kiss. We don't really know what's going on unless we imagine that in our minds. We have to visualize what happens here. Tybalt and Capulet had a conversation, and we had to take Romeo out of here and then calm down, it's a partilogist, and that Tybalt leaves the stage, and then Romeo says that if I profane with my unworthiest hand, you have to imagine all that. He touches her hand, maybe holds her hand and says this to her. That's very bold, very bold. He's confident. And what does Juliet say back to him? Immediately after she says, "Good pilgrim." We thinks that he may be wearing this costume. He's dressed as a pilgrim. A pilgrim is someone who is seeking a connection with God, and he's traveling somewhere like to Mecca to commune with God. So she calls Romeo a pilgrim. We think of him as a spiritual figure. So we have this plane where this is the physical world we're living in, and this will be the spiritual world. And calling Romeo spiritual figure, good pilgrim, it's a dichotomy. Like last time I mentioned that dichotomies in this text. And this one is spirituality and physicality. And look, with that idea in your mind, what Romeo says to Juliet. He's very suave, he's very smooth, he's a very cool guy. Here's what he says. Have not saints lips and holy palmers too? And Juliet says, I, pilgrim, lips that they must use in prayer. And Romeo says, oh, then dear saint, let lips do what hands do. What's going on here? They're being very playful with each other. It's complicated for us, but let's imagine. She's saying, you're dressed like a pilgrim, the saintly figure, and he says, oh, let us do what saints do, what is like to kiss, because when people pray, they put their hands together like this. Your lips are hands, and my lips are hands, so let us pray together, or let us kiss. It's very bold to go hold a girl's hand and say, do you want to give me a kiss? It's more interestingly that they do kiss. Remember, this is the very first time that they've met, and they're going to go ahead and kiss, but that's what happens in the stage direction. Then move not, all my prayers effect and it says, he kisses her. Thus from my lips by thine, my sin is purged. See what's happening here? The dichotomy of spiritual versus physical is being conflated, made into one thing. For Romeo, and maybe for Juliet, the physical is the spiritual. There is this sensual spirituality, and that's the idea about love. It's not a physical thing, it's not a spiritual thing, it's both of these things together. Another idea about love here, and there be a type of love that we're calling agape love, that is a great love for God that we wish for people, but Romeo seems to feel it here at first sight. Then from this kiss, first of all, you have to remember these are two teenage kids, and they have this kiss, and she says to him, this is line 109, she says, you kiss by the book. How do we interpret those lines to say you kiss by the book? We can see, first of all, he is like a student of love. He studied love, and he has great experience, and he kisses very well. But we wonder if Juliet knows he kisses very well, what experience does he have with kisses?